The ultrasound screen flickered, revealing a truth that tightened my chest like a vice. I'm Ethan Caldwell, 37, a Marine fresh off an 8-month stint in Kandahar, back in Tucson for just 2 weeks. I sat in the chilled antiseptic ultrasound room, watching my wife Sarah lie on the table, her belly glistening with gel. Dr. Nathan Carter's hand trembled as he gripped the wand, his face drained of color, like he'd stumbled onto something forbidden. "Mr. Caldwell, you need to step outside and call a lawyer." "Now," he said, his voice low and urgent. The words landed like a grenade, sharp and disorienting. Sarah's eyes darted between me and the doctor, her brow furrowed in a mix of confusion and dread, a look she'd been wearing too often since my return. "Is the baby okay?" I asked, my voice steady despite the storm brewing inside. Years of training kept me grounded when chaos loomed. Dr. Carter wiped his brow, his eyes flicking back to the monitor, as if it held a classified dossier. "The baby's fine," he said, then leaned in closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "But the fetus is showing. 32 weeks of development." The hum of the machine filled the silence, heavy and accusing. Sarah smiled faintly, oblivious, like she was still playing a part in a script I hadn't read. 32 weeks. I repeated the number in my head, cold and precise. 32 weeks ago, I was boarding a transport plane for Afghanistan, kissing Sarah goodbye at the airport, sleeping in a dusty barracks half a world away. Dr. Carter watched me, waiting for a crack in my composure. But I processed it like a mission brief, calm, deliberate. "Ethan, what's wrong?" Sarah's voice was small, fragile, her eyes searching mine. "Why is everyone acting so weird?" I studied her, really studied her. The way she'd been glued to her phone since I got back, the way she'd framed this pregnancy as a joyful surprise, the way she'd insisted I come to this appointment. She'd orchestrated this moment, I realized, a cold weight settling in my gut. I met Sarah 6 years ago at a backyard cookout in Mesa. She was a dental assistant with a laugh that could light up the desert night. I was stationed at Davis-Monthan Air Force Base, prepping for a transfer to Camp Pendleton. She said she admired the discipline, the honor of a military life. We married 3 years later in a quiet chapel ceremony at her parents' church. Nothing extravagant. I deployed twice during our marriage. Short tours she seemed to handle with grace. Care packages, handwritten notes, the house always in order, the kind of wife other Marines wish they had. When this Kandahar deployment came up 8 months ago, she sobbed at the airport, her arms tight around me, promising to wait. "I'll keep busy," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Maybe take up painting. Spruce up the backyard." I felt like the luckiest man alive. Overseas, our video calls were frequent at first, her face tired but familiar. By the second month, they tapered off. She was taking night classes. Watercolor painting, she said, to unwind. By month 3, I got brief texts. "Work's crazy, miss you." All good here. I chalked it up to her finding her rhythm. Military spouses build their own lives to cope. When I returned 2 weeks ago, she seemed jittery, different. She'd put on weight, blamed it on stress snacking, started wearing baggy sweaters, said she'd been under the weather, maybe a virus. Then last week she dropped the bombshell. She was pregnant. "I found out right after you left," she said, tears in her eyes, beaming. "About 10 weeks along. I wanted it to be a surprise. 10 weeks. I'd been home less than 2 weeks. She'd already booked this ultrasound, eager for me to see our baby. Pride swelled in me then. Coming home to this felt like a reward for surviving the desert. Now in this sterile room, the truth unraveled. The math didn't add up. Dr. Carter stood frozen, waiting for my reaction. Sarah's voice grew shrill, asking what was happening. I felt something fracture inside, but my face stayed stone. 32 weeks, I said, more to myself. Dr. Carter nodded, his eyes darting to the door like he wanted to bolt. "Mr. Caldwell, were you present for conception?" Sarah's face went pale, not confused but caught. "Ethan, I don't get it," she stammered. But her tone shifted, panic creeping in. "What does 32 weeks mean?" I stood, shoulders squared, voice level. "It means I was in Afghanistan when this baby was conceived." The room fell silent, the air thick with unspoken truths. Sarah stared at the ceiling, her hands trembling. "That's impossible," she whispered. "I told you I'm 10 weeks along. Right before you left." Dr. Carter cleared his throat. "Ma'am, the measurements are clear. This is a 32-week pregnancy, conceived about 8 months ago. I watched Sarah's carefully crafted story collapse. She'd miscalculated, underestimated the ultrasound's precision. There's got to be a mistake, she said, sitting up, the table's paper crinkling. The machine's wrong or something, but my mind was elsewhere, on our neighbor Ryan Mitchell, who'd been helping out while I was gone. Sarah mentioned him casually in calls, said he'd fixed the sprinkler system, moved a couch. Good neighbor, she'd called him. I thought of her shorter calls, late-night painting classes, her insistence on this ultrasound. She'd wanted me here to sell the lie, to bind me to another man's child. The cold weight in my chest spread, not rage, but a sniper's clarity. Dr. Carter, I need all the records, measurements, images, everything. Ethan, what are you doing? Sarah's voice cracked, her eyes wide. You're freaking me out. I'm getting the truth, I said, like any good mission demands. Her eyes told me she knew the game was up. The drive home was a study in silence. Sarah babbled, her words tripping over each other. Maybe they mixed up my chart, she said, twisting her fingers. Hospitals mess up all the time, right? Like that time they sent you someone else's lab. Results. I kept my eyes on the Tucson traffic, commuters oblivious to the wreckage beside me. Or the ultrasound's off, she pressed. Those machines are just tech, and tech fails. We pulled into our driveway. The house looked unchanged. Same cactus garden, same terracotta roof, same porch swing I'd hung 2 summers ago, but it felt alien now. I parked, the engine's soft ticks filling the quiet. Ethan, talk to me, Sarah pleaded. You're scaring me. I met her gaze. The weight gain, the baggy clothes, the careful way she moved in bed since I'd been back, it all clicked. When's the due date? I asked. What? If you're 32 weeks, when's the baby due? Her lips parted, then closed, her mind racing for a safe answer. The doctor didn't say exactly. 8 weeks, I said. 32 plus 8 is 40. We stepped inside. The house heavy with the scent of lavender candles Sarah loved. It smelled like home, but it wasn't. In the kitchen, I poured a glass of water, staring out at Ryan Mitchell tinkering with his truck in the next yard. Mid-40s, single, worked as an electrician, helped Sarah with odd jobs while I was gone. Want me to make lunch? Sarah asked, her voice too bright, too normal. How long have you been sleeping with Ryan? The mug she'd grabbed slipped, shattering on the tile. What did you say? You heard me. I turned to face her. How long, Sarah? That's crazy, she said, stepping back. Ryan's just our neighbor. He helped out, that's all. How could you think that? Her retreat, her wide eyes, guilt, not innocence. So the baby's yours, she insisted, her voice firming. I don't care what the doctor saw. We'll get another opinion. I knelt to pick up the broken mug, the shards glinting like evidence. Sarah, I'm trained to spot lies. This isn't Kandahar, but deception's the same. This isn't a war zone, she snapped. This is our marriage. I tossed the shards in the trash. You're right. In Kandahar, a lie could get you killed. Here it just destroys everything. Tears streamed down her face, raw and desperate. I love you, Ethan. Whatever you think happened, I love you. I walked to the bedroom. I'm packing a bag. Where are you going? To get a lawyer. Please, we can fix this. The baby needs a father. I paused in the doorway. The baby has a father. It's just not me. I checked into a motel near the base, a no-frills spot I knew from training days. At 0700, I called my lawyer, Mark Reynolds, a former Navy man who'd handled our home purchase. Ethan, what's up? I laid out the ultrasound, the timeline, the betrayal. Damn, he said, exhaling. That's brutal. I'm sorry. What are my options? First, a DNA test to confirm non-paternity. Then we document everything. Ultrasound, texts, anything about the pregnancy. Finally, we prep for divorce. The house? Arizona's a community property state. But infidelity can tip the scales, especially if she used joint funds for the affair. We'll need proof. I drove back to the house. Sarah's car was gone, probably at work, playing normal. Inside, I went to her desk, rifling through papers I'd never needed to check before. The findings gutted me. Credit card charges for dinners at places we'd never gone. Hotel stays in Phoenix. Receipts for men's clothes, size large, not my medium. Phone bills showed hundreds of calls to Ryan's number. Starting a month after I left, worst was a receipt from a women's clinic, dated 7 months ago. Prenatal vitamins, a pregnancy test. She'd known from the start and planned to pin it on me. I snapped photos, evidence for the mission. A car pulled into the driveway. Sarah, home early. She froze when she saw me in the kitchen. "I thought you were gone," she said. "Came for some things." She set her purse down, eyeing me warily. "Have you been digging through my stuff?" "Should I have?" I showed her a photo. The dinner receipt paid with our card. "Explain this." Her face paled. "I took my cousin out for her birthday. Your cousin lives in Flagstaff. She was in town." I swiped to the hotel receipt. "And this." Silence. "Then the clothing receipt. This too." She sank into a chair, defeated. "How long, Sarah?" She buried her face in her hands. "Since a month after you left. 7 months. Almost my whole deployment. The baby." "It might be yours." "You know it's not." She looked up, mascara streaking. "What now?" I was already heading out. Mark's office in Phoenix was sleek, all glass and polished wood. I slid the photos across his desk. "This is everything." He reviewed them, nodding. "Solid evidence. Credit cards, calls, medical records. You okay?" "I'm functional." He got it. "We file for divorce, citing adultery. Arizona allows fault-based claims, and this is airtight. We'll push for a DNA test and reimbursement of misused funds. The house? With this we can argue for a bigger share. Judges don't like marital assets funding affairs. I left with a plan and a court date. That evening, Sarah was cooking dinner, my favorite steak and potatoes. "I made extra," she said, hopeful. I filed for divorce. The spatula hit the floor. "Ethan, please." "Let's talk. There's nothing to say. The baby's not mine. The DNA test will prove it." She shut off the stove, tears welling. I was lonely. Ryan was there. "It was a mistake. 7 months isn't a mistake. It's a decision. I love you." "No, you don't. You wouldn't have spent 7 months with him while I was dodging bullets." She sank to the floor, sobbing. "I was going to tell you. After the baby." "You mean after I'd raised another man's kid for years?" Silence. "Papers will be served tomorrow. Get a lawyer." I left her there, dinner cold on the counter. Outside, Ryan was in his driveway tinkering with his truck. Our eyes locked. He looked away. The courtroom was stark, Judge Elena Martinez presiding. Sarah sat with her lawyer, a nervous guy in a flashy suit. Mark presented our case. Phone records, receipts, the ultrasound, and the DNA test. Zero chance I was the father. "Your Honor," Mark said, "the defendant conducted a sustained affair, misused marital funds, and attempted to deceive my client about paternity." Sarah's lawyer argued the affair didn't matter for assets, but Judge Martinez wasn't swayed. The defendant's actions breached the marital contract and misused joint property, she ruled. The plaintiff is awarded 65% of marital assets, including the home. The defendant will repay misused funds and cover all pregnancy-related costs. As the child is not the plaintiff's, the gavel fell. Outside, Sarah caught me. "Ethan, I'm sorry." She was visibly pregnant now, alone. "Sorry doesn't undo 8 months," I said. She nodded and walked away. 3 months later, I signed the final papers. The house was mine. Sarah had moved to her parents in Colorado. Ryan lost his job, cheating with a Marine's wife doesn't sit well in Tucson's tight-knit contractor circles. His ex-wife reopened their divorce settlement after learning of the affair, costing him more. I sold the house, too heavy with ghosts. Han bought a condo near the base, clean, unburdened. My CO offered another deployment. I declined. I needed time stateside to rebuild. Some nights I'd sit on my balcony, imagining the life where I'd believe Sarah's lie, raised a child that wasn't mine, that Ethan Caldwell would have lived a fiction. I chose the truth, raw and brutal. The court taught me to value clear intel in combat and in life. Sarah's betrayal failed because she underestimated a Marine's instinct for facts over illusions. The strongest response to deceit is walking away from the lie.